Our stance, government stance on Kashmir is absolutely clear. It was our jugular vein. It is our jugular vein. We will not forget it. And we will not leave our Kashmiri brethren in their heroic struggle, what they are waging against the Indian occupation. And we have fought 3 wars for Kashmir.
The man you heard just now is General Asim Munir, Chief of Army Staff of Pakistan. He gave a speech on April 20th. 2 days later, India saw one of the deadliest terror attacks in decades.
Several tourists were killed and many others injured in a terrorist attack in Pahalgam in Jammu and Kashmir today. Military choppers have been pressed into service for the evacuation of those injured in this attack. In a telephonic conversation, Prime Minister Narendra Modi asked Union Home Minister to visit the attack site and take all suitable measures. Mr. Shah will arrive shortly in Srinagar and he will be holding a high-level security review meeting with all the agencies.
On a quiet sunny afternoon in Kashmir's Pahalgam, what was supposed to be a dream vacation turned into a bloodbath. 6 gunmen dressed like soldiers opened fire on tourists in a meadow known as Mini Switzerland. 26 people, mostly tourists, were killed. Just like that. This is the deadliest terrorist attack in Kashmir in years. And it didn't target the army, it didn't target politicians, it targeted civilians, ordinary people, families, tourists. They attacked people who believed Kashmir is safe now. The truth is, for the past few years, the Modi government has been selling us a dream of normalcy, of booming tourism, of investment coming into Kashmir. It was a good dream, but it came to a brutal end with this nightmare of an attack. This is a video about the deadliest terror attack Kashmir has seen in decades. This is a video about why this particular attack feels a little different and it hits a bit harder. This is a video about what might be the possible agenda behind these attacks and what is the Indian government doing about this. On that, I have a bunch of thoughts. April 22nd, 2025. It was a usual day in Baisaran, a lush green meadow tucked away in the mountains 5 kilometers from the main Pahalgam market. No roads, no cars, just pine trees, ponies and hundreds of tourists soaking in the views. The kind of place where the loudest sound is usually a child squealing with joy on a horse. But around 3 p.m. on that day, the silence shattered. 6 men armed with AK series rifles emerged from the dense forest. Some wore camouflage, some were in black. Tourists mistook them for army men until it was too late. Eyewitnesses say the attackers grouped people together, asked them their names and their religion. They selectively shot Hindu men at point blank range in front of their families. They weren't in a rush, they took their own sweet time and even filmed the attack. There was no security presence in the area, no immediate help. So the poniwalas, the local guides, became first responders. One of them, Wahid, carried the injured down the mountain on ponies. There were no ambulances, no roads, no police, no army, just panic. And an otherwise serene meadow full of dead bodies. Pahalgam, by the way, is not a usual touristy destination. It is a sensitive place with a multi-tier security system which is already in place. Army, CRPF, J&K police are all stationed there because of how critical it is. It is on the route to Amarnath, one of the holiest Hindu pilgrimage sites in India. Baisaran is an area which is known as Mini Switzerland and it attracts close to 2,000 visitors a day in peak season. And yet that area was completely left unguarded. How and why? Not even a single patrol, no intel. This whole thing just doesn't make sense. And the group that took credit for the attack is called the Resistance Front. It was created after Article 370 was revoked in 2019. TRF claims to be an indigenous outfit, but according to the Ministry of Home Affairs, this is basically a front for Lashkar-e-Toiba. Just Lashkar-e-Toiba wearing a different mask, if you will. This group has already carried out brutal attacks in the past. So it was not like they came out of nowhere. They have been behind the targeted killings of migrant workers, Kashmiri Pandits, and even a school principal in the valley in the last few years. But this attack was next level. This was a full-blown massacre in the middle of a booming tourist season designed to do one thing and one thing only: make Kashmir bleed on camera. The Pahalgam attack was just different. But to understand why, we need to go back in time a little bit. Kashmir is no stranger to violence. For over 3 decades, this region has seen bombings, crossfire, encounters, Fidain attacks, and targeted killings. But there is something about this attack that feels like a warning to us. Because civilians were targeted. And not just any civilians, tourists were targeted. That hasn't happened at this scale, at least, for a long time. The closest comparison we can make is to the Chhatti Singh Pora massacre, which occurred 25 years ago. In March 2000, 35 Sikhs were gunned down in Anantnag. This happened when President Bill Clinton was on a visit to India, the US president back then. By the way, during this Pahalgam attack, US Vice President J.D. Vance was on a visit to India. This is somewhat of a pattern. Whenever someone important from US visits India, there is a chance that Pakistan will do an attack in India. The Chhatti Singh Pora massacre was only the beginning, though, of a series of deadly attacks specifically targeting Hindu pilgrims in Amarnath. In August 2000, 32 people were killed at the Amarnath Yatra base camp. In July 2001, another 13 Yatris were killed in Sheshnag. In 2002, 11 Amarnath Yatris were killed at Chandanwari base. Tourists and pilgrims were soft targets back then, easy to kill, and it guaranteed headlines. But over the years, as the security grid tightened, these kind of attacks stopped. Tourist activity went down as well. People were more reluctant to travel to Kashmir on holiday. In the 2000s, the Indian army tightened its grip on the state and attacks dropped significantly. For a brief period, it seemed like terrorists were also avoiding targeting tourists. That was probably because they wanted local sympathy, and if you attack tourists, then tourism goes down, then the terrorists would find it very difficult to convince the locals that they were on their side. But in 2007, there was another attack on Amarnath Yatra bus in Kulgam. 8 people were killed. And then came the big one, Pulwama attack in 2019. 40 CRPF Jawans killed in a suicide bombing. It became the symbol of what Pakistan-sponsored terrorism could still do. But that was still an attack on a military convoy, not civilians. Which is why this, the Pahalgam massacre, is the deadliest civilian attack Kashmir has seen since the past 25 years. And especially since the abrogation of Article 370 in 2019. It's deliberate, calculated, and it is designed to send us a message. The resistance front is out to prove that this talk of normalcy in Kashmir is just temporary. In fact, the attack happened days after Home Minister Amit Shah reviewed the security situation in Jammu and Kashmir on April 7th and 8th. It's quite clear now the claims of terrorism has been crippled in Kashmir have gone up in smoke because of this attack. So this Pahalgam attack is not just a flashback to a dark past, it's actually a signal that the past can still come back to haunt us. So how did the Indian government retaliate? Indian intelligence officials are still investigating the Pakistan connection with this attack. As of writing this, LET commander Saifullah Kasuri is being held as the primary suspect. Intelligence inputs also indicate that a possible involvement from 2 Rawalkot-based LET handlers, including a man named Abu Musa. Within hours of confirming Pakistan's involvement in Pahalgam attack, the Indian government pulled the trigger on a series of diplomatic and strategic countermeasures. The biggest one was the suspension of the Indus Waters Treaty. India announced that until Pakistan incredibly and irrevocably stops supporting cross-border terrorism, the water sharing agreement would be held in abeyance. It will be suspended. The Indus Waters Treaty, or IWT, has been in place since 1960. It was signed by Jawaharlal Nehru and brokered by the World Bank after 9 years of negotiation between India and Pakistan. And despite 4 wars and the Kargil War and decades of Pakistan-sponsored terrorism, this treaty was still in place. Under the treaty, India gets exclusive rights over eastern rivers, Satluj, Base and Ravi. Pakistan, on the other hand, gets rights over the western ones, Indus, Jhelum and Chenab. Now, with the treaty suspended, India can change how it uses those western rivers, mainly stopping flow data to Pakistan, no more restrictions on dam design or operations, the ability to create storage on Jhelum and Chenab, and allowing reservoir flushing to extend the life of dams like Kishanganga. This whole thing can turn out to be a significant blow to Pakistan if it is followed through. It won't choke Pakistan's water supply overnight, since India doesn't yet have the infrastructure to fully divert the flows, but the suspension of this treaty allows us to build that sort of infrastructure. The Indus Waters Treaty has no exit clause, it has no expiry date, it cannot be unilaterally revoked, but it can be ignored. And that is probably what India is trying to do right now. Pakistan can cry foul all it wants, but legally there is no arbitration mechanism either that can force India to meet the requirements of the treaty if it walks away. Which means Pakistan is staring down the barrel of a future crisis on agriculture, electricity and economy, which could all be threatening for them, drip by drip. Basically, it is a signal from India to Pakistan that that tap can close anytime. Other than this, India has taken some more diplomatic measures. The Atari Integrated Checkpost, one of the few remaining trade corridors, has been shut down. All the SAARC visa exemptions for Pakistani nationals have been cancelled. Pakistan's military advisors have been declared as persona non grata and have been told to leave India in 48 hours. The strength of both the high commissions in Delhi and Islamabad have been cut by half. So yes, India has retaliated already. Not with surgical strikes or tanks or missiles, nothing that dramatic, at least not yet, but we have retaliated diplomatically with treaties, visas, trade routes, and more significantly, water. As I write this, it has been almost 48 hours since the attack, and we are yet to see if there would be any military retaliation for that attack. There are many warmongers out there, especially in Godi media, who are asking for another surgical strike or an out-and-out invasion on Pakistan, but that would be an extreme step. War is not good for anyone, for either countries. So for now, it's just wait and see. So now that I have given you a lowdown on what has happened, it's time to ask some big questions. Why did this happen? What was the possible agenda behind this attack? On that, I have a bunch of thoughts. Why now? Why tourists? Why Pahalgam? It's easy to dismiss this as just another attack from across the border, but if you look closer, this was choreographed for impact. There was timing, there was targeting, and there was messaging behind it. So let's break it down. First, the location. Baisaran, which is mini Switzerland, it's not a military base. It's just a peaceful tourist spot. It is not accessible by road, which might be one of the reasons why it was picked in the first place. Just open meadows and dense forest around it. From Pahalgam, tourists reach the meadows on foot or horseback, and the journey takes about 1 hour. Tough terrain means emergency responders or security forces would take a minimum of 30 to 40 minutes to reach the popular tourist hotspot. The terrorists had most likely done a recce of this area and noticed a lack of security at the location. Reports indicate that the terrorists built hideouts in densely forest areas around the meadow and wore body cameras while carrying out these deadly attacks. Second, the timing. This is peak tourist season in Kashmir. From April to October, places like Pahalgam, Gulmarg, and Sonmarg see a massive influx of domestic and international tourists. This year had opened strong. Over 8 lakh people visited the Srinagar Tulip Garden in just 26 days. Tourist numbers in Kashmir had hit record highs this season, from 34 lakh in 2020 to 2.36 crore in 2024. The overall size of the hospitality industry in Kashmir is 21,000 crore rupees right now. And all of this now is at stake. Basically, people were finally starting to see Kashmir not as a conflict zone but as a holiday destination. So when terrorists attacked Pahalgam, they were not just killing people, they were killing the confidence by choking an economic lifeline. Following the attack, there was an rush of tourists who wanted to get out of Kashmir and go back home. Travel agents in Srinagar have reported 90% cancellations in the days following the attack. Entire hotel bookings have been wiped out. Many of these businesses, especially local guides, pony handlers, houseboat operators, they had taken loans betting on a good season. Now those bets will turn into liabilities as well. This attack has dealt a body blow to tourism in Kashmir. Third, the targets. Tourists, ordinary people who came to Kashmir with the promise of peace and a good time. They were not collateral damage, by the way, they were a message. They were the message. Because if the goal of these terrorists is to make Kashmir a disputed territory again, an ungovernable conflict zone, then this is how you do it. You don't bomb a police station or attack an army checkpoint. That just invites retaliation. But if you want to really cripple a state and turn it into a conflict zone, then you target civilians so that the fear seeps into everyone. The people who were killed hailed from Gujarat, Maharashtra, Karnataka, Haryana, Chhattisgarh, Tamil Nadu, and Odisha. The fear that they were trying to spread has now spread to those states as well. The result of all of this is that tourists will stop visiting, locals will lose income, desperation will grow, and desperation is a fertile ground for radicalization. On the surface of it, this attack is an act of terrorism, but in reality, it is an act of economic sabotage. This is psychological warfare on all of us, and this isn't new. We have seen the same strategy being used in the early 2000s when Amarnath Yatris were targeted consistently. Another thing, the targets of this attack were primarily Hindu men. Eyewitnesses say that the terrorists took their own sweet time mingling with the tourists, talking to them, asking them their religion, and testing them by making them recite the Kalma. Then they specifically killed Hindu men. The terrorists are using the existing Hindu-Muslim divide playbook to create fresh enmity between the two communities. This is the same playbook our own politicians have used and perfected to gain votes during elections, by the way. That tells you a lot. Just take a look at the statement that was made by the Pakistani Defense Minister Khwaja Asif after the attack. He said, "Pakistan has no connection with this. This is all homegrown. There are revolutions in different so-called states against India. Not one, not two, but dozens. From Nagaland to Kashmir, in the south, in Chhattisgarh, in Manipur. In all these places, there are revolutions against the Indian government. These are homegrown. The people are asking for their rights. Hindutva forces are exploiting the people, repressing minorities and exploiting Christians and Buddhists. They are being killed. This is a revolution against that. It is because of this that such activities are happening there." So, in a way, the Pakistanis and their proxy terrorists are trying to use our existing divisions to further divide us. The question is, will they succeed? That's kind of up to us, isn't it? Look, I'm not going to mince any words. The attack has made me angry. Seriously. Murdering civilians in cold blood, those who were just out to have a good time, to enjoy scenic mini Switzerland with their families, that's just not done. This just makes my blood boil. And somewhere deep down, it makes me want to take revenge on Pakistan. It's really hard not to bring emotions into it. And I totally understand why Hindus will get especially pissed off by this targeted killing. No matter how much you tell them that terrorism has no religion, etc., etc., the anger will be there. And I don't blame them. But then I also understand that this is exactly what those terrorists want. If we divide ourselves based on religious lines, it makes us weaker as a society and as a country. They want me and others like me and you to react, to lash out, to be angry. But how can we stop this sort of emotional nationalist backlash from happening? Well, my solution is to focus on these two people. First one is a man called Wahid, the head of local Poniwala association in Pahalgam. He can be seen in this video on his phone as a tourist pleads for help. Wahid and others spent more than an hour to rescue the injured, while the administration was absent. This man was coordinating the transport of injured tourists to a hospital in Pahalgam. Second one is Syed Adil Hussain. Eyewitnesses say that when the terrorists were attacking tourists, Syed, who was also a Poniwala, jumped on one of these terrorists and tried to snatch his gun away. He was then targeted and killed in cold blood. This is an unarmed Kashmiri Poniwala who jumped into the fray to save a tourist. People like Wahid and Syed are the ones who we should keep in our minds when we are talking about these attacks. They have showed everyone that normal people of Kashmir are not to be blamed for this horrible incident, even if they share a religion with the terrorists. Take my advice, ignore the shitheads who are currently using this incident to further their shitty Hindu-Muslim narrative and political agenda. Think about Wahid and Syed instead. And I can't help but think, after all of this, can Kashmir be normal again? Can it be normal ever again? I don't know. I mean, we had seen a glimmer of hope in the past 2-3 years, but maybe that was not meant to last. I think our government especially became just complacent. I just really hope that the Modi government gives some clear answers about what happened here. There was clearly a massive intelligence failure that happened, and other security agencies are also to blame for not securing the area where thousands of tourists are visiting. The Home Minister has to give some answers to the public and tell us what they are doing to prevent such incidents from happening again. Let's hope they at least do a press conference, because there are some tough questions that they need to answer. Does the government still claim that Kashmir is safe for tourists, or has that stand changed after this attack? Were there intelligence inputs about an impending terror attack? If yes, then why is Kashmir open for tourism at all? And can the government please make statements to calm people down so that Kashmiris don't get attacked in other parts of India? Because that's very much required right now. There are already attacks happening on Kashmiri students elsewhere in the country. The security of Kashmir is in the hands of the Home Ministry, primarily Amit Shah. So he needs to answer these questions. Our prime influencer, meanwhile, Narendra Modi, he cut short his Saudi Arabia trip, came down here, did a few meetings, and then did what he does best. Went to a state where elections are coming up, which is Bihar, and started giving threats from a stage in an election rally.
Friends, today, from the soil of Bihar, I say to the whole world, India will identify, track, and punish every terrorist and their backers. We will pursue them to the ends of the earth. India's spirit will never be broken by terrorism. Terrorism will not go unpunished. Every effort will be made to ensure that justice is done.
So all we can do now is watch helplessly and hope that the government knows what it is doing. Yeah, what else can we do? And maybe not fight amongst ourselves, and maybe just think about people in Kashmir who are also suffering because of this attack. In the end, this attack wasn't just on 26 lives, it was on our belief that peace in Kashmir is possible. And until we start asking some hard questions about security, accountability, and what kind of country we want to be, attacks like this will not stop. Let's not let it fade away into the news cycle this time as just another thing that happened. I hope the victims rest in peace and their families are doing okay. Yeah. Thank you for watching.